expect us to wait.
These jeers echo in the pitch-dark hall. I work part-time at a music store. Today, we're hosting a major event, a piano concert. Unfortunately, we're hit by a power outage, leaving us in complete darkness. After 20 minutes of delay, the audience's frustration and anger are palpable.
Enough is enough. I'm leaving.
Just as some of the weary audience stood up to leave, I say, "I'll go." As a mere part-timer, I head towards the piano. In the darkness, I touch the piano keys. It's hard to see the keys. There's no sheet music. But none of that mattered. I start playing, each note deliberate. This moment would drastically change my life. My name is Nick Johnson, and I'm 29 years old. I'm a piano tuner, well, technically just a part-timer at a music store. Some people find it odd that I chose part-time work at this age. But the store manager, a genuinely understanding person, never pressures me to change my role. One day, the manager introduced me to someone from the company. Our store is expanding soon, and this person, transferred from another store, is here to lead and manage the expansion.
Hi, I'm Allison. I'll be your boss, but you all know this place better than me. Teach me the ropes.
Allison, who introduced herself at the morning meeting, was stunningly beautiful. She has healthy fair skin and short glossy black hair. Her facial features are well defined, and she looks more like she belongs in magazines or on TV than in a music store. The other staff and part-timers are equally impressed. They can't think of anything other than, she is beautiful, and were left speechless by her beauty.
Nick, can I have a word?
The workday begins, and while I'm checking the pianos, the manager calls me over. With Allison by his side. She's meeting everyone individually.
This is Nick Johnson, our part-timer. He's a piano tuner, skilled but a bit aloof.
The manager shrugs, and I can't help but protest. I'm polite to the customers.
I know. It's not that. It's about being more approachable. He doesn't open up easily.
I feel more irritated, being described like a wary animal. I thought I was open with you.
I wish you'd share more of yourself with others, not just me.
Right.
So, Allison, if there's anything about pianos, Nick's the guy to ask. He's a skilled technician, despite being a part-timer.
I wish he wouldn't raise expectations too high. Disappointing people hurts, but I can't say that out loud, so I just nod ambiguously to get through the situation.
Nick, can we talk about your shift for the day after tomorrow?
The next day, Allison approached me right after the morning meeting. Yes, what about it?
It's about where you'll be working the day after tomorrow.
Helping at another store.
No, I want you to come to a concert with me.
She hands me a flyer for a concert in a neighboring city's concert hall. The performer is well known to anyone who's played the piano. I've been to his concerts a few times. For work.
We need to tune the piano before the rehearsal. Our company has a contract with him.
I see. But why me? Aren't you a tuner too, Allison?
Yes. But James spoke highly of you. I thought it'd be good for you to gain some professional experience.
James is our manager's name. Experience. I have no plans to get promoted. But I am still an employee of this company. As a part of the company, I should follow the policy to gain experience. Plus, I have no reason to refuse. I'm not thrilled about going to the concert hall, but if it's for work, I'll do it. I nod, hiding my reluctance. On the day of the event, I followed Allison across the hall where staff was busy with preparations, and onto the stage.
Mr. Stevens, it's been a while. I'm Allison from Cherry Music.
Hey Allison, thanks for coming today.
They greeted each other, Allison and the concert's main pianist, John Stevens. They seemed to know each other. Allison started working right away, while Mr. Stevens looked troubled.
Listen Allison, this piano's been moody lately. Maybe it's nervous about the new venue, but the sound's just off.
Indeed, as he caressed the grand piano, its tone was peculiar. Though the keys themselves were fine. But each note seemed to flutter unpredictably, like butterflies in the wild. Why would Mr. Stevens' piano, usually so well maintained, behave like this? Allison, frowning, was fully immersed in her work.
How's this?
Wiping sweat, Allison stepped back from the piano. Mr. Stevens laid his hands on the keys. He began to play his favorite piece, but just 3 bars in, he stopped.
No, this isn't right.
He sounded frustrated. Allison looked disappointed. Her tuning was impeccable. The notes were harmonized. But the core of the sound still seemed scattered.
Sorry, just give me a bit more time.
It's not you, Allison. I'll adjust during the rehearsal.
Wait, Allison. I couldn't help but whisper to her. Maybe a brighter tone could help align the sound.
Brighter tone?
If we adjust it that way, the direction of the sound might.
Wait, hold on.
Allison grabbed my arm and pulled me closer to Mr. Stevens.
Sorry to bother you again, but please give us just a little more time. If this doesn't work, we won't charge for today's tuning.
Okay, if you insist.
Thank you.
Then, Allison positioned me in front of the piano. While making excuses about assistance and such to Mr. Stevens, she whispered to me.
Give it a try.
Me?
I'll take the responsibility.
She handed me the tuning tools, and I hesitantly began to work on the piano. Touching the keys, I immediately felt the disconnect. The sound was higher and louder than expected. Mr. Stevens was right about the piano being nervous. I focused on my fingertips and ears, engaging deeply with the piano. After what seemed like an eternity, I was satisfied with the result. Before finishing, I whispered to the piano. It's okay, your sound is the most beautiful in the world. I'm done. Turning around, I found Allison and Mr. Stevens staring at me, surprised. Allison had even stepped away from the piano. Though she was supposed to lead the tuning.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Stevens sat down at the piano.
You had an impressive presence. I couldn't interrupt.
As soon as Allison spoke, Mr. Stevens began to play beautifully, the melody singing through the hall. Thankfully, the piano seemed happier now. Both Mr. Stevens playing and Allison standing by were captivated by the music. I too was lost in Mr. Stevens' performance for a while. After completing the piece, Mr. Stevens stood up and shook my hand vigorously.
You're amazing. You fixed it perfectly.
I'm glad you're pleased. Mr. Stevens, playing the second piece with enjoyment, moved smoothly into rehearsal. Relieved, Allison and I sighed and stepped off the stage. Sitting on a bench in the lobby before the audience arrived, I watched the rehearsal on the monitor. I was supposed to head back to the store afterwards, but Mr. Stevens insisted I stay and listen, so they hastily arranged a seat for me. Allison handed me a cup of coffee from a vending machine. Thank you.
That's my line.
She sat next to me and sipped her coffee. Even when she simply sips coffee, she looks like a model in a commercial. She didn't mind my gaze but instead looked back at me.
What are you, really?
Just a part-timer at Cherry Music.
Not that. You know what I mean.
She gestured towards the piano on the monitor.
Nick, your tuning skills are extraordinary. Hard to believe you're just a store part-timer.
It was just good chemistry with that piano.
Come on.
Nick, is that you?
A voice from behind startled me. I instantly regretted being there.
Seriously, Nick?
Lucas. An old college classmate was standing by a cart stacked with boxes.
Long time no see, man. Still into piano, huh?
No, it's a different job.
Different job?
Lucas caught on, seeing the tuning tools beside us, and smirked smugly.
Of course, that loser who embarrassed himself couldn't still be playing piano.
What are you doing here? I ignored his demeaning comment. He tapped the boxes.
Setting up for the concert. I'm with Mr. Stevens' agency. Handing out pamphlets at the reception today, getting my face out there. Being popular keeps me busy.
I see.
Are you staying for Mr. Stevens' performance?
Yeah, I guess.
Then, try not to feel bad about yourself. You were always awful under the pressure.
Lucas left with a backhanded advice. Allison looked unsure how to react. He's a former classmate from my conservatory.
Conservatory, huh?
Yeah, anyone can get in. You asked what I am. I'm really nobody. But I did major in piano, so I have a good ear. That's all.
Right.
We both fell silent. Allison no longer asked questions, and the sound of piano through the speakers was the only thing filling the air.
James said you don't open up to people.
Allison mumbled.
But you open up to the piano.
Me, open up to the piano? Did it seem that way? I no longer play the piano. But the fact that I'm still involved with work related to pianos. No. I don't want to think about it. Yet, her words lingered in my ears. I was distracted until the rehearsal ended. After successfully expanding our store, Cherry Music decided to celebrate with an event. They planned a concert at a nearby hall, inviting contracted pianists. And they will sell the pianos used at the performance. All of it was Allison's idea. I thought it was a big business move, but the pre-event publicity was incredible. Whether people came for the piano or the performers, the seats sold out before the day of the event. I was busy as a prep staff member, moving around the hall. Naturally, I was also tasked with tuning the pianos for the performance. Alright, this should be good. I gave the well-conditioned piano a final polish with a cloth. I hope someone out there wants you. Talking to a piano might look weird to anyone watching. But Allison's words that I open up to the piano still resonated with me. Indeed, the time I spend at the piano feels right. Even though I no longer play, I still want to share the beauty of the piano with others. So maybe she wasn't wrong. The rehearsal ended, and the audience filled the hall. Despite the heavy rain outside, it was almost full house. I stayed backstage in case of any issues with the piano during the performance. Enjoying a prime spot to listen to the pianists. The concert was about to start any minute now. As I glanced at my watch, the hall plunged into darkness. What? I looked around, but it was pitch black everywhere. The murmurs of the audience began to rise. Staff members, using flashlights and smartphones, scurried around backstage.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. It seems that a lightning has struck nearby and has caused a power outage in the building. Please wait a moment while we work on restoring power.
Staff shouted to the audience, their voices echoing in the dark hall. A power outage, huh? Tough luck. But the backup power should kick in soon, I thought. Only the emergency lights glowed green as everyone anxiously awaited the restoration. However, the lights didn't come back on. 20 minutes had passed since the outage. In the backstage, everyone was getting restless.
When will the power be back?
The backup system isn't working for some reason.
Let's make another announcement.
I could hear the staff discussing the situation.
Hey, isn't it coming back yet?
How long are you going to keep us waiting?
We're leaving. This is ridiculous.
The audience was losing patience, some shouting at the stage and staff. A few people even stood up and headed to the lobby. Still, no sign of the lights returning.
This is bad. Maybe we should start the performance.
But performing under these conditions.
I overheard Allison and James discussing nearby. The pianists we invited today could play in the dark. But that's not the point of concern. Using them to calm down the audience seemed unfair. They were our guests, and we didn't want to disrespect them. Yet, if we did nothing, the concert would be ruined.
Nick.
James called me with a strained voice. I stiffened, understanding his unspoken request. He wanted to tell me to play. You can't be serious, I haven't played in years.
You've been listening, though.
That's different. James knew why I had stopped playing the piano. He had never pushed me to return, so why now, in this situation?
You love the piano, and there's no way you can't play. I believed that one day you'd be back on stage, so I never said anything until today.
But why now, in this situation of all times?
I saw it as an opportunity.
Opportunity?
The stage is pitch dark right now, nobody knows it's you, and they won't even suspect. With the power outage, no one's expecting a perfect performance. Even a child playing would satisfy them.
That's... James was trying to lower the bar to help me muster up the courage.
Nick.
Allison tapped my shoulder.
Actually, I've heard you play once. James arranged it.
What?
Just once. When you were in high school, at a competition.
You heard that performance.
I love that piece. Would you play it for me?
Her casual tone nudged me forward. Jeers from the audience were drowned out by Allison's encouraging words.
You put a great spin on the opening part, right? I really liked that.
That was a childish arrangement.
Was it? I was captivated.
She sat down at the piano and opened the piano lid. It seems like she is going to listen to my performance next to me. Right, I was playing for Allison. Forget the crowd, it's just us in this space. My fingers began to move naturally. Suddenly, all sounds but the piano faded away. No audience. Just me and Allison. A familiar classic, played countless times. Even after years of not playing, my fingers, arms, and feet remembered. I played my favorite phrases. The arrangement Allison liked. Some parts were challenging, but beautiful. The music flowed, bringing back fond memories. Despite the break, the piano filled in where I faltered. Thank you, you're a wonderful piano. Just a little longer, stay with me. I let go and drifted in the sea of sound. Such a pleasant feeling. I wished to linger longer. Reluctantly, I played the last phrase. As my hands left the keys, a blinding light engulfed me. I squinted, and then slowly opened my eyes. Then, a thunderous applause filled the space. Looking up, I saw many people in the audience, standing and clapping, some whistling. What's going on? Was this applause for me? What had I just done? Right, there was a power outage, and I was playing the piano. And now the lights were back on. Oh no! I hurriedly stood up and ran off stage. But then I stopped.
Nick.
James and Allison, concerned, were following me. I turned to face the audience. gave a bow, and then finally left the stage.
Thank you for today.
After my performance, the concert resumed as planned. I was in a daze until the cleanup was done and James and Allison brought me back to reality. In the calm of the dressing room, I sipped water, quenching my parched throat.
The concert was incredible, you know? There were so many inquiries about who the pianist was playing in the dark. But I kept your identity a secret. Should I have told them?
No way. I don't want to be the center of attention.
I understand you feel that way. But still, your performance today was truly wonderful.
It was thanks to you, Allison. Because you were there listening, I could play.
I didn't do much, rather, I was the one who dragged you into it, right?
Even so, it was because you made me forget about the audience that I could play. Can I talk to you about something? I shared with Allison how I became who I am today. I had been playing the piano since kindergarten and continued passionately through high school. By the time I entered conservatory, I was already known in the industry as a student pianist. It was around this time I got my piano tuning certification. I wanted to be able to tune the pianos I played. In my early college days, I was unbeatable in competitions, often coming in first place. I was even called a genius pianist. I was happy to be highly rated, but what I enjoyed most was seeing the reactions of people who heard me play. However, as college graduation got closer, I hit a massive obstacle. It was Lucas. A classmate at the same school, we knew of each other. I was astonished when I accidentally heard him play at a competition. His playing was rough, bold, yet with a delicate rhythm. He was unknown until then but started to gain recognition as a late bloomer. He also had a piano tuning certification, and our competition winnings were comparable, leading to frequent comparisons. Then, in a competition we both entered, Lucas won first place, while I barely placed the 10th. It was the first time we competed together, and I was clearly shown the difference in our abilities. I became anxious, worried about being outdone by him, and started to focus more on rankings than the joy of playing. In college, competition results quickly became everyone's knowledge. It was impossible not to care. Without the joy of playing, my piano playing wasn't well received anymore. I became scared to perform in public. Even if I played well in practice, it turned terrible in front of an audience. I made unbelievable mistakes, and once, I was heckled during a performance. From then on, performing in public became a trauma for me, and I became averse to being the focus of attention. Understandably, my reputation plummeted. People I thought were friends began to treat me coldly. It seemed my connections were based on my fame. I knew not everyone was like that, but it was hard to tell who genuinely cared. Even those who were nice to me on the surface might despise me, and I became paranoid. As a result, I became fearful of close relationships and kept others at a distance.
I see. I'm sorry to have made you share such a painful story.
Allison looked sad after hearing my story. No, I'm sorry for burdening you with my life story.
Why apologize? I'm glad you shared it with me. It shows you're opening up, right?
That's. She was right, talking about my trauma meant I wanted her to know. And I didn't mind her knowing. Especially since she helped me play the piano again.
Being able to play earlier was because you didn't know how others were viewing you, right? It's a matter of mindset, and whether you can play in the future is a battle with yourself.
A battle with myself.
Yes, because you said the audience's reaction was your greatest joy, right? Then, you can't ignore their presence.
Her words made me realize something. Indeed, I was afraid of the audience's eyes, but what I really sought was their reaction. So, the one I should be fighting isn't the heckling audience, but myself.
I have a suggestion.
Allison said, showing me a video on her smartphone. The screen was dark, obviously the recording was of my recent performance.
Today's concert was open to recording, right? Mr. Stevens was there, and he recorded this. If you're okay with it, he wants to post it on social media.
What's the purpose? I wonder if there is any demand for an unknown pianist, let alone a performance in the dark.
Obviously, to let many people hear your wonderful performance. Of course, we won't mention your name or show your face. I want you to see the reactions of people who listen to it, to see how much your playing can move them.
Do you think that will work?
Yes. I guarantee it.
True to her word, the video went viral. The post, titled "A Miracle Performance in the Dark Amidst a Mishap," gathered numerous praising comments.
Convinced now? Your piano playing can bring joy to people.
Allison showed me the comments as if they were her own achievement. There was even talk of an interview about the video, and I reluctantly agreed. Every time I remembered that day, I felt the urge to play the piano again. When I discussed this with Allison, she happily suggested several opportunities to play. Starting with small, locally organized competitions, I gradually became accustomed to performing in front of people. Every performance, feeling the audience's direct reaction, was enjoyable, and I started participating more and more. Eventually, it was revealed that I was the pianist from the performance in the dark, and my name, Nick Johnson, became well known. Then, I was invited to perform as a guest at a concert hosted by Mr. Stevens. I was so grateful to him for everything. After a rehearsal, I was chatting with Allison in the lobby when Lucas greeted us. He had indirectly caused my departure from playing, but my departure was actually because of lack of my ability. Despite his attitude, I couldn't dislike him and responded without recalling too much of my trauma.
Performing today, huh?
Yeah, thanks to Mr. Stevens. Are you on the program too, right?
Backstage today. By the way, I heard you're having a concert sponsored by Cherry Music soon. Let me know if you want me to play.
Ah, right.
Allison cut in, suddenly remembering something.
I finally found out about you. You were the one who messed up Mr. Stevens' piano.
What?
What do you mean?
Apparently, he took over the tuning job from Mr. Stevens' tuner by force, claiming his affiliation with the same agency. It seems like he has a certain position in the office, so no one warned him. According to someone who was watching the scene, he interfered with another tuner's work and adjusted it to suit his own style.
Why would you do that? That's why, the sound was out of sync. It was because Lucas and Mr. Stevens played in completely different ways. Why did you do such a thing?
Maybe you were trying to shift gears to being a piano tuner before your declining skills became too obvious? This isn't just my own speculation. I've heard it from people at the office.
Apparently, that observation was spot on.
I was about to make a mistake in front of Mr. Stevens. But thanks to you, Nick, you really saved me there. But I had to report it to the office because it could damage our reputation if we let it slide. Also, I was surprised to find out that you're quite unpopular among the girls at the office. Whenever I bring up your name, they all seem displeased. They complain about you being pushy with dates and making unwanted physical contact. And behind the scenes, you've been speaking ill of Mr. Stevens. I've reported this as well.
Oh!
Lucas turned pale. Maybe that's why he was on the backstage team today.
Maybe you were talented at one point, but it seems you got too proud. Well, you can always start over. I recommend starting as a music store part-timer.
Eventually, Lucas's contract wasn't renewed, and with rumors spreading in the tight-knit industry, he struggled to find another position. I heard he ended up working part-time at another music store, though I'm not sure if Allison's advice played a part. As for me, I'm still at Cherry Music. I became a full-time piano tuner and occasionally perform at concerts.
Aren't you aiming to be a full-time pianist?
Allison asked, concerned.
Part of me plays for you. I don't plan on leaving Cherry Music.
Seeing her blush at my response, I realized what I had implied.
No, that's not it. Of course, I want others to hear me too, but having you, who helped me overcome my trauma, that makes me happy.
My words sounded like a love confession, and I ended up asking her out. Surprisingly, she accepted without hesitation, and we got married within a year.
Finally, you've opened your heart not just to the piano, but to me as well.
Looking at her with a happy smile, I truly understood that the piano isn't just a means of competition but something that brings joy to people. It took me a while to realize something so obvious, but from now on, I want to cherish both my feelings and the piano. A colleague caused trouble with a client, leading to a $1 million deal being scrapped. But I was the one who got fired. The whole mess started 12 hours ago. My colleague and I had a business meeting scheduled. He arrived at the meeting place just in time, in a terrible mood. Apparently, his girlfriend had caught him cheating and dumped him. I think he was to blame, but he didn't seem to think so, and he badmouthed her all the way to the client's office. His mood hadn't improved by the time we got there. He didn't even greet the employee who welcomed us, just clicked his tongue and headed for the elevator. During the meeting, his attitude remained unchanged, and the client's mood soured progressively. Choosing their words carefully, the client tried to warn my colleague. Honestly, I was relieved because I couldn't stand the guy and was glad someone else said something. I thought maybe he would change his attitude if someone in a higher position spoke up. But then the problem erupted. Suddenly, my colleague slammed his hand on the desk and began to berate the client terribly. Naturally, the client was offended and the deal was called off. My colleague didn't even apologize. He just left, so I was the one who had to express a big apology. I kept apologizing. I hoped somehow the deal could be saved, but of course, it was no use.
We want his apology, not yours. Please tell your boss there will be no more business with you guys.
With those words, the client left the conference room. On the way back, I racked my brain for an explanation to give to our boss. My colleague was a favorite of the president's. Even if I told the truth about the incident, I doubted I'd be believed. I hadn't sorted out my thoughts by the time I got back to the office. As I was about to sit down at my desk, the president blocked my path. And just he said,
"You're fired."
After the incident, my colleague returned to the office before me. While I was apologizing to the client, he was telling everyone at the office that I was the one who messed up and that's why the deal was off. By the time I got back, everyone had already labeled me the culprit. The president didn't listen to my side of the story.
"You're fired. Get out. You're useless,"
he said, and kicked me in the stomach. The president's harassment was well known, and nobody stepped in to help as I was on the ground in pain. I spent the day being berated by him as I prepared to hand over my duties. I had no energy left to argue my innocence, I just wanted to get out of the office. But just when I thought I was done and could go home, I was given another task and ended up working overtime until late at night. Finally, when my work was done, I headed home on foot, and that's when I noticed an old lady repeatedly checking inside her bag. Maybe she lost her keys. I could have just walked on by, but something made me stop. I bought some bread at the grocery store and sat on a nearby bench. I watched the lady without her noticing. It wasn't just out of concern. I wanted to be thanked. For the past few years, I've worked like a horse at a thankless job. And today, I was discarded. Like it was nothing. I felt incredibly sad, realizing just how easily I could be thrown away. I felt like nobody needed me, but if I helped this old lady, she'd surely thank me. Being thanked meant I was needed by someone. I was a person of worth. With that twisted kind of kindness, I approached the old lady.
Good evening. What brings you out so late?
The old lady turned around, her eyes wide, as if she was about to say something. Maybe she's suspicious of me. But soon, she smiled and said,
Looks like I've absent-mindedly left my purse behind.
She walked a bit and pointed at a food stand.
I wanted to have a hot dog.
She said, looking down. Instantly, I imagined that an old lady eating hot dog late at night. It seems pretty unhealthy, and part of me thinks she shouldn't, but she looked genuinely disappointed. That made me feel sad too.
I'll cover it, for you.
I pulled out $10 from my wallet. She seemed hesitant to accept it.
Please, take it.
I insisted, meeting her gaze.
Oh, thank you.
She said, clutching the $10 bill as if it were very precious.
I really wanted it today, thank you.
She thanked me repeatedly.
I will pay you back. May I have your name?
If I give her my name, I might have to see her again. Honestly, I don't really want to make connections with people right now. I nodded slightly and left without giving my name. Right after that, I started a part-time job doing roadwork. It's tough physical labor, but the night shift suits me fine since I prefer not to run into acquaintances. Every day is about learning something from scratch, working, sleeping, and then working again. A month flew by just like that. As usual, I was heading home at dawn when someone suddenly called out to me. I looked up and saw a petite old lady standing there. She looked familiar.
You're the hot dog guy, aren't you?
She said with a cheerful smile.
I'm glad to see you. Well, come over to my house. I'd like to thank you.
She said, pulling my hand. She's very conscientious. All this for a hot dog. Maybe she'll treat me to a cup of tea. In situations like this, I'm supposed to refuse at first, but I was so thirsty I accepted her invitation right away. I felt bad entering her house in my sweaty, dirty work clothes, but as long as I don't sit down, I won't dirty her home. I'll just ask for some water and leave. After walking for a while, she stopped and opened a large gate, saying,
This is it.
We passed through a well-maintained garden into the house. She guided me to the living room and then disappeared into the kitchen saying,
I'll bring some tea.
It was as I thought, she seemed quite wealthy. A garden that a gardener likely maintained. A Western-style mansion that could be a movie set. A living room with a high ceiling. An enormous chandelier hanging from it. I might have never been in a rich person's house before. I got a bit excited and wandered around the living room while she was away. The chandelier and furniture looked expensive, but there were no other extravagant decorations in her living room. Instead, there were photos, probably of her husband and children. I wonder if the kids have moved out and she lives here alone.
Oh my, did you find something that caught your interest?
Engrossed in the family photo, I hadn't noticed that the old lady had come back. When the old lady got to my side, she leaned in to take a look at what I was holding. I hesitated a bit, but then I crouched down and showed her the photo in my hands. It must have been taken when picnicking at a lake shore. Behind the neatly arranged family, like in a group photo, there was a peaceful lake. A child, who seemed to be her grandkid, and the old lady, looking unchanged, were side by side making big smiles. They were surrounded by 3 grown children and their spouses. Everyone was smiling very happily. However, the husband was not in the photo.
This is from this year's lake picnic, isn't it? The kids, they suggested we go see the lake after a long time. They were probably concerned about me, staying cooped up at home after my husband passed away.
I couldn't find the right words to say. Silence enveloped us. It would be nice if I could say something to lighten the mood in times like these, but that's just not possible for someone as socially awkward as me. It was the old lady who broke the silence.
Oh right, this.
The old lady took my hand and placed a bill in it.
Ah, thank you.
It was just $10. What an honest person to give it back. As I accepted the $10, the old lady seemed a bit relieved.
Now, let's have some tea.
She urged me towards the couch. But I was currently wearing dirty work clothes.
I'm sorry, I'm a bit dirty right now. I'd better stand.
As I said this, I reached for the teacup, but the old lady stopped me.
You can't expect a guest to stand while sitting down, can you? Please have a seat.
The refined old lady put on a motherly air of authority and made me sit on the couch. I sank deeply into it. The old lady sat down opposite me. And then she placed a teacup in front of me. I picked up the teacup, which was decorated with fine details, and drank the tea. I didn't know the name of the tea leaves, but the slightly reddish tea was really good.
Thanks to you, I got to eat my favorite hot dog.
Saying this, the old lady also took a sip of her tea. Honestly, the elegant tea in front of us seemed more fitting for the old lady than hot dog. Yet seeing her head out for a late-night food stand hot dog, it appeared the old lady was quite the hot dog enthusiast. Surprising.
By the way, why were you in the park so late at night?
Ah. I didn't respond immediately, so the old lady looked at me with a worried expression.
Well, actually, I got fired from my job.
Upon hearing this, the old lady stood up and sat next to me. Then with her clean hands, she gently touched my dirty work clothes and patted my back.
A mistake by a colleague was pinned on me, and they told me to leave that same day. My boss wouldn't listen to my side of the story at all, he just decided I was the culprit.
That was bad enough, but there was something else that made my blood boil.
A week later, during negotiations with a client, it turned out I was innocent. But there was no apology.
It was about a week after I had started a part-time job on a road construction crew. Suddenly, I got a call from the company.
Come back tomorrow.
I couldn't understand what was being said.
I went to apologize to our client, right? They said it wasn't your fault. The termination is canceled, so please come back tomorrow. Oh, and while you're at it, could you drop by the client's president and let him know you're coming back? Otherwise, our reputation will be completely ruined. Ha ha ha.
What's so funny? I simply said.
I have no intention of returning.
And hung up the phone. After that, the phone rang over and over again, but I didn't answer.
They fired me for a crime I didn't commit, and not a single word of apology. They want me to come back tomorrow just to save face for the company. How selfish can you get?
I raised my voice and then realized. The old lady had done nothing wrong. She was just worried about me and wanted to hear what happened.
I'm sorry. I raised my voice all of a sudden.
Don't worry about it. You've done nothing wrong.
The lady took a sip of her tea that had gone cold and said,
There have always been people who do unfair dismissals. I was fired too. It was over 30 years ago.
The lady began to speak slowly. Back then, it seems she worked in a jewelry store. It was an old establishment and apparently did quite well.
I was blessed with good colleagues. It was tough, but I enjoyed the work.
Remembering the past, the lady chuckled. Then she looked down.
One day, there was a fuss because the sales money was short. Of course, I said I didn't know anything about it, but a coworker claimed she saw me take the money. I claimed that it was impossible, but no one would listen. After work, the manager called me in and asked if I would voluntarily resign.
One day before the shortfall was discovered, only the lady and that colleague were present. According to the lady, the colleague had a considerable amount of debt.
When I suggested reporting it to the police, they begged me not to.
Why?
There were rumors that the manager and that coworker were dating.
The manager chose to protect his guilty lover rather than the innocent lady.
They offered me a better-paying job in exchange for taking the blame and resigning. I was so astounded. I just didn't care anymore and agreed.
The job she was introduced to afterward was at a company that dealt with the purchasing of jewelry and antiques. It seems that's where she met her husband. They didn't take long to start dating.
Our work ethics and how we liked to spend our days off were so similar. It was comfortable being by his side.
The couple who married a few years later were blessed with children and led a peaceful life.
Every moment spent with my husband was happiness.
The lady mumbled while looking at her husband's photo on the shelf.
The day I met you was the monthly anniversary of my husband's passing.
The old lady goes to that food stand to eat hot dog every month on the anniversary, it seems.
He really loved hot dogs. He always looked so happy eating it. His favorite was that stand. We often went there together to eat. When I eat that hot dog, it makes me feel like I'm back on a date with my husband,
said the old lady.
But on the day I met you, I had carelessly left my wallet at home. I was in trouble, and then you came up to me and saved.
She continued, with a kind look in her eyes.
And it made me really happy.
She looked at me with such gentle eyes.
You remind me a lot of my husband when he was younger. I thought maybe he had come to see me.
That's why she was so surprised. I was relieved that she hadn't mistaken me for a suspicious person.
Meeting you and getting to eat that memorable hot dog made for the best day.
Just looking at her face, full of loving kindness, strangely put my heart at ease.
I'm sorry.
Why are you apologizing?
Suddenly, as if remembering something, the old lady started to panic.
I'm sorry for being so happy about a day that was probably terrible for you. It's inappropriate of me.
Her smile faded. She had her head down with a sad and troubled face. And it started to make me feel sad too.
I was actually happy to hear you say that.
I told her, wanting to see her warm smile again.
True, I was falsely accused and fired, which made it an awful day, full of anger and sadness. But if I could be of help to you, that made it all worthwhile.
That night, I hadn't lent her money out of pure goodwill. I was abandoned by my company, unable to gain their trust. I didn't know if I had any value left. Then I saw the old lady in need. Helping a troubled elderly person might make me feel like I had some worth after all. With such a selfish thought, I lent her money. I was only thinking of myself.
I thought that by helping someone in need, I could recognize some value in myself.
Saying it out loud made me even sadder. I couldn't find the words. The old lady hugged me as I began to cry without a sound. When I was alone, I couldn't shed a tear, but in front of her, they naturally started to fall.
I'm sorry for losing it all of a sudden.
It's okay. Being able to cry when you need to, even as an adult, is a wonderful trait.
After that, I began to visit her house occasionally on my days off. It was very soothing, like a second home. Since reuniting with her, my heart has been much calmer. With a more relaxed heart, I became more productive at work. 3 years later, I became a full-time employee. Since I was working earnestly at a road construction for a part-time job, I was invited to work as a staff member. I was overjoyed. However, there was much more to learn than I expected. Not just the workflow on site, but I also had to get some certifications for the future. It's study, study, study every day. I often come home and go straight to sleep. But even so, I feel that my life is much more fulfilling than before. I'm a very fortunate guy.